Hey, yo. Hello, folks. Welcome to another edition of Stirring the Pot.
In the
We
pot.
here. We here, y'all. Hey, listen, I know you guys have been watching the show and have been watching everything that's going on. So I want to say to you guys, thank you for your support. Thank you for your time. Thank you for watching. So without further ado, I'm gonna get right into it. Y'all seen this person yesterday on the pot, but if you didn't, I'm gonna give you a quick rundown. This is the VP candidate for the presidency of the United States, along with Dr. Cornel West. This is a nice, beautiful soul. This is a highly intelligent being. This is a queen. She walks it like she talks it. This is a organizer for Black Lives Matter, coordinator, all around good person. And she's trying to help clean up America, folks. So I want to say it like that. I want to say it from my heart. I don't want to sound like how all the other hosts on shows is give you a rundown and everything that she's done, because she can tell you herself. You can hear it straight from her. Okay? So without further ado, once again, I give you VP candidate Melina Abdullah. How are you today?
Hey, I'm great. Thank you so much for having me back, brother.
Hey.
You're in the pot.
So, for those that didn't watch, give yourself a formal introduction like only you can.
Sure. Well, my name is Melina Abdullah. I'm a professor is my day job. I teach Pan-African Studies at Cal State LA. I've been teaching for 22 years now. I'm also co-founder of Black Lives Matter Los Angeles and Black Lives Matter Grassroots, which is the original formation of Black Lives Matter. So we are the 39 chapters that move the work on the ground. And I'm a mama of 3 children. So I got a 20-year-old, a 17-year-old, and a 14-year-old. And
hey.
yeah.
So y'all here?
About all that. All that.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. Teaching. Let's talk about that before we get into anything else, right? Tell the people a bit about how you got into teaching.
Sure. Well, that's a long story, but I will say that I'm from a long line of educators. So my mother was an elementary school teacher. She's now retired. My grandmother was a high school home ec teacher. My baba was an elementary school teacher. My brother is now a school administrator, but used to be a high school English teacher. My sister is a nursery school, preschool teacher. So we're all educators in my family. So I feel like it's kind of a very sacred job that's in my bloodline. And I became an educator thinking, now I'm going to tell you my whole life story.
Please do. This is what we're here for. I want the people to get a side of you that they need to know, because I want to make this as real as possible, because all of the other sides of you they know of if they looked you up or seen you on the ground, like you said. You're on the ground with the folks. So please do continue.
Yeah, I mean, I'm from East Oakland. I'm from Oakland, California, and came of age at a time when crack cocaine hit our neighborhood really hard. And even though my mother is an educator, I dropped out of regular school and thought at the time I was a hair model. So I used to do all those hair shows that might be before your time, but in the 90s, hair shows were a big deal, and you can't tell now because I don't I have my hair done anyway.
Beautiful hair. You still have beautiful hair.
But it used to be short and blonde and crimped and all that stuff. And I used to model hair, and eventually I thought I would wind up becoming a hairdresser. And that's what I thought. But I'm again my mother's daughter, and my mother made me at least apply to college. I wound up going from independent studies, where I was really prepping to take my GED, to going back to traditional school in the 12th grade, and did graduate from traditional school. And so my mom like required that that my siblings and I apply to college. So I applied to Howard University. And I don't know, maybe she's coming through my spirit right now, but my cousin, who was like a sister to me, a big sister to me, she was a year older than me. Her name is Trinice Harper. She
Okay.
was killed my senior year. And it's still devastating to me. And I was running, and I'd had lots of friends and people in my neighborhood who've been killed. Again, this is the height of the crack cocaine epidemic in Oakland. I'd lost a lot of people, but there was no loss that compared to the loss of Trinice. And I was running, and I had applied to go to Howard, didn't think I'd get in, but was accepted. And so with Trinice's murder, I decided I needed an escape. And I left Oakland and went to Washington, D.C. And, I tell my children, they have a rule that they can go anywhere they want to for college, but mama will pay for a HBCU, because
Right.
Howard literally changed and saved my life. Everybody from the professors, I was going to say the professors, but it was the professors and the secretaries and the security guards and the counselors, everyone there took me as their child. And I went from dropping out of school in the 10th grade, in the 11th grade, to graduating magna cum laude, Phi Beta Kappa from Howard University, because everyone there thought I could do it and was betting that I could do it. And so then I went on. I thought from Howard I would go to law school, because also the Rodney King uprisings happened when I was an undergrad. And
That was right in the middle of everything going on,
that's right.
And wasn't, correct me if I'm wrong, I might be wrong, but wasn't the OJ trial around the same time of Rodney King, or was that a little bit
The
after?
OJ trial was like a year after, I believe. But
Okay.
don't get me wrong. Don't make me say it wrong. It was maybe 93. The uprisings were 92. I believe the OJ trial was 93. I'm not positive. We could Google it.
Alexa, volume 10. Alexa, what year did Rodney King and OJ go to have situations? That is the wrong question.
When was the OJ trial?
Alexa, when is the OJ trial?
The trial of O.J. Simpson for the murders of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman lasted from January 24th to October 3rd, 1995.
October 3rd, 95.
95.
Okay.
So it was after. It was after the.
It was after. Yeah.
So Rodney King was absolutely April 92. Was what we were witnessing. Was
Okay.
April 92, was the uprisings, was April 92, and I thought I had seen Maxine Waters for the first time, and I thought I want to be that
legend. Political legend.
That's
yes.
Right. And so I told my professors that I wanted to go to law school. And I remember one of my professors, Dr. McCormick, said, "We got enough Black lawyers. Why don't you get a PhD?" And I never thought of that. And I wound up getting into this program called the National Name Exchange, and was recruited by a bunch of different schools to go into a PhD program, and wound up going to USC and earning a PhD in political science there. And
That's awesome.
Of course, with PhDs, you're encouraged to become professors, and that's how I became a professor. And there's a lot of other people involved. There's my mentor at USC, Dr. Michael Preston. And there's just a bunch of beautiful Black folks who, this is what I love about our people, that there's there's a concept in political science. Now I sound like an educator, right? In political science called
Educate the people. Do what you do best. I don't mind.
yeah.
Trust
I mean, we see ourselves in each other. We see our fates as linked. And so I have a million. I wasn't raised with my biological dad, but I have a million dads. I have a million babas. I have a million uncles. I have my mom, and then I have a million aunties, right? And so all of these folks helped to shape me into who they knew I could be. And even though I
Support.
saw myself in the 11th grade as a dropout, right? They
Mhm.
said, my mom said, you're going and you're going to get a degree, right? And everybody at Howard said, no, you can do this. We're not going to remediate you. We're not going to fail you in classes. We're going to help you step up. And then I get into a PhD program, and I have a professor like Dr. Michael Preston who says, oh no, you're going to be, he used to say, you're going to be a superstar, right? And he didn't mean like a Beyonce superstar. He meant like a Bell Hooks superstar, right? Like,
Right.
right, you can think, you can do this. And I love that about our folks. And I love that about how now, as a spirit mama to dozens and dozens of people, I feel like I know what that means. And I hope and pray that I can be that for other people as well.
Absolutely. That's awesome. To piggyback off that, I grew up without a daddy too, so I can relate. But I had a few father figures as well. I was in a boys' home. I was in the system for a little bit because I was a truant kid going through daddy issues because my dad was around, but he wasn't around.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So he knew where I was, but I was one of those type of kids that just wanted their daddy and daddy wasn't there. So I took it out on everyone else. Became a truant kid, was knucklehead. So it's not
Yeah.
about me today, though.
No, I'm appreciative of you sharing, because I should also make sure that I'm very clear. I know who my biological father is.
Right.
You know, it's not that I didn't ever see him. He wasn't in the home and he didn't raise me. My mother raised me. And then I was fortunate enough that she married my baba, and my baba is still my baba. And, you know, he's, I feel very fortunate that I've had phenomenal men in my life. And even now I'm telling you really all my business. See, you are a great like even between my biological father and my baba, my mom got with this guy named David Thompson. And David was her boyfriend from, I guess, the time I was in the 7th grade to like must have been just the 9th or 10th grade. David is still a father to me. My kids still call him Grandpa Dave. He didn't pay for my college, but he paid at the time in the 90s. This was a lot of money. Every month faithfully for 4 years at Howard. This man who
That's
only
awesome.
my mama for 4 years sent me $200 a month to make sure I got through college, right?
That's awesome.
So I feel very, very fortunate by the way in which I was raised. And I think it also speaks to the lies they tell about our brothers, right? They say that Black men don't raise their kids.
That's
But
right. They say we're absent, but I'm living proof as well that
right,
I've never left my children's side and I never will.
right. And
So
that David actually
we
shows that
step
Black
up in a
men are
lot of ways.
participatory. Black men participate with their kids more than any other group. And so
Absolutely.
I'm a living witness to the beauty of Black men being willing to not just raise their own kids, but raise kids that are not even their biological children.
Absolutely. Shout out to all the fathers and stepdaddies out there. Salute to you, kings. All right. So I think that's pretty awesome within itself. You have loving people around you, people that want to push you and help you achieve a goal. So let's talk about how you got started into politics. Let's break it down a bit. Tell the people.
I just got started in politics. I never, ever, ever, I used to proclaim I will never, ever run for office. I study politics. My PhD is in political science, but I like to critique politicians, not be one. And then Dr. Cornel West, who is our greatest thinker, our greatest intellectual,
Yes, he is.
decided that he was going to run for the presidency. And I was overjoyed and became an ardent supporter. And I'd come to know Dr. West. Really, I met him first as an undergraduate student, but come to know him through both movement work and Black studies work. And I felt honored and privileged when he would come to Los Angeles, and sometimes he'd invite me to introduce him, or my children would be invited to sit on panels with him. And I was content with that. I was content to help amplify his campaign. And then earlier this year, he asked me to be his running mate. So this is my first entree into politics, and I don't have any political ambition other than how can we use electoral politics to help win freedom for our people.
That's awesome. So my next question is, what do you say to the people that say you're not even a politician? How can you help the people?
Well, I can help the people precisely because I'm not a politician.
That's
right.
right. Talk
So,
about it.
my study is this, that you have kind of two groups of people who run for office: those who run based on ambition and those who run based on a sense of service. I
Yes.
feel like this is an opportunity for me to be of service. This is an opportunity. The first Black woman to ever run for the vice presidency was in 1952. It was a sister named Charlotta Bass, who was also from Los Angeles, also lived in Los Angeles. And she was a journalist. And
Right.
she ran on the Progressive Party ticket. She said, "Win or lose, we win by raising the issues." So I'm running not because I have any political ambition. I don't. And this will probably be my last traipse into running for office, right? But I do feel like we have an opportunity to raise issues. I shared with you that I'm short on time today because we have an emergency that popped up in California around our reparations bills and in the California state legislature. We must raise issues like reparations. Like, we have to say everything is not reparations. No, it's great that we have legislation about natural hair. I wear my hair natural. My children wear their hair natural. But that's not reparations, right?
Right.
Reparations got to come with a check, and a fat one,
So
right?
let's break that down a bit. Tell the people a bit more about that, because we started to unpack that on the pod, but we didn't get to go very far with it because we were pressed for time as well. So without getting too far into it, but let's cut into the main parts if you can for us. Tell us a bit about it and what you plan to do, you and Dr. West.
Sure. So reparations is at the very top of our agenda. We know that when you talk about Black people, especially Black people in this country, whose labor and lives built what is now the Americas, and our wealth has been stolen from us. Randall Robinson famously wrote a book called The Debt, that there is a debt that this country owes to the Black people whose labor and lives built the country. And it's not us asking for a handout, it's us demanding what we're owed. What's happening in California is there was a really brilliant reparations task force that was appointed more than 2 years ago. And now we're moving to, well, what does reparations look like? And, there has to be a reparations fund. That means dollars.
Right. So how much money would be allocated to this bill?
In California, that's a determination that hasn't been completely made yet, but that's what these two bills that we're advocating for right now are, is to set up a fund and also to designate who would be eligible, because the California fund is specifically for those who were enslaved in the state of California, people like Biddy Mason and her descendants, right? And people will go, well, California wasn't a slave state, but we do know that there were white folks who dared to call themselves our owners, who would move Black people from slave states to states like California and keep them enslaved. And so we don't have the exact dollar figure, but that's what these bills are intended to do in California. Now, if we talk about what we really need, which is what
For
Dr.
the country, right? The country,
a federal reparations
right?
bill.
How much would you think that would be?
We're talking about at least $10 trillion. Now, that sounds like a lot of money,
It's not.
but
The country has it though.
think about how they came up off that money for COVID, right?
Absolutely.
About the fact that they spent a couple $1 trillion on the Department of Defense, on the Pentagon alone.
All the time. Yeah.
Every year. They can pay it, and look, we'll take installments. You can pay it over 10 years like you mortgage in a house. That's fine. But we got to consult with our people to make sure that's fine. But that's where we are. The country has it, and they owe it to us. And again, I think that there's also conversation and research that organizations like National Association for Reparations have been doing. And then there's organizations like in Cobra who've been doing this work for, the better part of 60 years or so, 70 years or so, right, that have been doing work. It's really, really important that we talk about what that looks like and what's owed, and the role of also corporations. Corporations owe us reparations, right?
Absolutely.
You got to remember, pretty much every major insurance company,
every major insurance company definitely ate off the backs of slaves. The railroad companies, all of them.
Right.
All of them. Hospitals, all of them.
That's right.
We can keep going on that one. That's something that I'm into heavily. And I watched Dr. West.
Right.
Roland Martin and Dr. West are like two people that I have an infatuation with as far as watching intellects talk about these things. And I start to read more. I'm a rapper. I'm gonna keep it all the way real. I'm a rapper, but the things that I read about doesn't say I'm a rapper. So it impresses a lot of people when I start to have these types of conversations. I'm sorry, my mouth is kind of dry, but tell us a bit about not just the reparations, but tell us about how Black Lives Matter comes into play with that. Like, can you tell them a bit about it?
Sure. Well, Black Lives Matter grassroots, and I want to be clear with your viewers that I'm with Black Lives Matter grassroots. We stand on front lines, not red carpets, right? If people want to follow our work, we're at blmgrassroots.org, blmgrassroots.org, and we're BLM Grassroots on all social media. And so want to be very clear that that's who we are. And Black Lives Matter Grassroots has been supportive of reparations since our inception. We understand that as we're talking about the end of state-sanctioned violence and the freedom of Black people, there has to be economic remedies that begin with reparations. Because even if we set rules now that allow us to run the race, with the same set of rules, well, we're starting hundreds of years behind. And so
way behind.
Right.
So it would take many, many, many generations to catch up, honestly.
It's really an impossibility. You can't catch up.
You can't, because they had the country since its inception. I'm sorry.
That's right.
Since the country's inception, they had everything. So it's like That'll take forever. So I agree.
Right.
With that being said, with so many people against reparations, how do you guys plan to get this through?
Well, I don't know a Black person who's against reparations. Do you?
Not Black people. You know what I mean when I say so many against. You know.
Well, I think that the truth is most people in the world community are for reparations,
Yes,
right?
they are. They are. It's just this country in particular, the
This,
United States of America.
this country in the world is against reparations being paid to Black people.
Right,
But we
and that's
gotta
what I'm talking
remember,
about specifically.
this country paid reparations to Japanese people, right?
Japanese,
Jewish
Jewish
people were paid
people.
reparations,
Yeah,
and none of them, save indigenous people, right, were dehumanized for hundreds of years, as were we. None of them had their labor stolen for generations, as did we. So reparations is a concept. My part of what I studied in grad school was international law. It's a basic principle of international law. It's only racism that says Black people don't deserve reparations.
right. I agree. I agree. So, oh, I'm sorry. This light is acting a little goofy right now.
Worries.
Um, it keeps cutting off on me. I don't know why. But it looks like I need to charge it, folks. I'm sorry about that. But I feel the same way. I feel as though that our people should have reparations because our ancestors have basically built this country. Like I said, Wednesday when you were on, and you could tell by everything that's in this country, they built it all. They built it all. And with that being said, my next question to you is this. With, so many people talking about the border, right? They talk about border patrol and we need to stop the migrants from getting in. How do you guys plan to deal with that issue as well?
Well, I think that gets us into what is our foreign policy, right? We have to remember that people do not want to leave their homes, right? People want to stay where they were born, where they built community, where their families are. And we have to remember that it's really US intervention that forces people out of their homes, right?
Absolutely.
Really Western intervention. If you think about the drastic number of Haitians now seeking asylum in the United States, well, that's foreign policy. That's, as it actually links to reparations, right? That
Right.
those are stolen African people who are now the Haitian population. But when they became the first country to throw off the chains of slavery and become the first free Black republic, right, in 1804, right? They were then charged with paying France reparations.
Right.
So
I heard about that.
had the opportunity to develop themselves as an economic engine, and Black people there are now searching the world for places where they can be safe. And so I think that one of the things Dr. West says is, that really helps to get to the root of why people are looking for asylum and safe spaces globally, is that the United States has to stop thinking that it needs to stop being interventionist throughout the world and instead be a nation among nations. We have to topple the empire. He
Right.
says he wants to become president of the empire so that he can dismantle the empire. And I think that that's really what we should be focused on. And it goes again back to this whole question of what are we going to do for people here? Well, when we're sending massive amounts of money to protect, let's be clear again, we're protecting global capital. We're using the US military to protect PepsiCo, to protect Coca-Cola. They both have
Coca-Cola, yeah.
to protect oil companies in Africa and in the Middle East, right? Those are our tax dollars. If we
Yes, they
stop
are.
doing that, we could use those very same tax dollars to house everybody, to feed everybody, to provide education for everybody, and to pay Black people reparations.
And that could take care of the homelessness issue that we have in this country as well. And I think that, I see a lot of the other presidential candidates not even talk about that part of it as well. We have a lot of homeless people in this country, right? So my next question is, you just spoke about the housing. Tell us a bit about affordable housing, how you plan to do that for people.
Sure. So it's really important that we understand that there is plenty to go around. So people talk about, and you hear mostly the ownership class talk about austerity, and there's not enough to go around. We live in a world of scarcity. They say this as they have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 houses and yachts and $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 cars, right?
Right.
They say that we don't have enough. No, we have plenty. What we have to do is disrupt both corporate greed and the greed of the wealthy, and say that there has to be a floor beneath which nobody can fall. And that means housing is a human right. That means healthcare is a human right. That means quality food is a human right. That means education, pre-K through PhD, is a human right. For less than 10% of what this country currently spends on war, we could have housing for every single person in this country for less than 10%. And so it's really important that one of my mentors is Dr. Julianne Malveaux, who's our world's greatest economist. And she always talks about budgets as being zero-sum games. And we know what this means in our own homes, right? If you decided to go shopping and you went to Nordstrom's and you spent $3,000, then when it's time to go grocery shopping, that's money you don't have. That's money you don't have to pay your rent. Well, if in this country we're spending money on war, money to protect, again, the rich, that means that that's money that we don't have to make sure that everybody in this country eats. Everybody should eat,
I believe that the rich should pay their fair share just like everybody else, and the rich get the most pay cuts when it comes to taxes. So what do you plan to do about that? What will you tax the rich?
Yeah, well, you said it. We'll tax the rich, but also even more than rich individuals is rich corporations.
Absolutely.
So corporate taxes, I mean, if you think about, there's a phenomenal film, it's a little old now, but it's called Walmart, The High Cost of Low Prices, right? Think about
I heard of that film. I just haven't seen it yet.
Yes, totally worth watching, and it's free online. But if you look at what Walmart has done to steal from the working class of this country by preventing unions, stopping unions, stopping unionization among their employees, but also they were taking out what they called peasant insurance on their workers. So if their workers died, there would be these life insurance policies that weren't paid to the spouses and families of the workers, but actually went back to the store, right? If you think about what Walmart does in terms of paying people so low that you and I as taxpayers are supplementing their incomes through food stamps and public housing, right? And how they're corporate polluters, and then how they kind of create these conditions where they pay virtually no taxes and actually get tax breaks for the places that they are. And I'm using Walmart as an example, but the same is true for Chevron and Exxon and Nestle and all of these major corporations.
Apple, Coca-Cola, like once again.
That's right. So tax the rich, but that means tax rich individuals and tax corporations, because that's really where our tax base should be.
Oh, that's awesome. And I believe that you guys can get it done. So we spoke about racism a little bit because we had to kind of like end the episode, right? How do you plan to deal with the heavy racism as far as, you know, people constantly getting attacked, black, white, whatever, you know, with all of the racism going on? What is your plan for this? Because I think people really need to understand that we are the most attacked a lot of the time. And people try to sweep it under the rug like it's not happening to us. But it's been happening to us forever, to be honest, you know, but it's still happening from cops. It's happening from employment, from an employment standpoint, where once they see this a black person filling out an ad and they're trying to get the same job, they're not going to get it, but the other race would. Like, there's a lot of that going on as well. So what do you guys plan on doing about this?
Right. So we got to be very clear. Like, when I say this country was built on the stolen labor and lives of Black people, we have
Absolutely.
to remember that that's what racism is. It's a system of oppression that exists. Most of the time, we wind up focusing on individual acts of racism, and
Right.
individuals do carry it out, but it's
Corporate
also
racism.
systemic and institutional.
Yes. Systemic racism. Yes.
And we have to remember that every single system carries out racism, and Black people stand at the bottom of every single social, economic, and political measure, right? Even when we look at healthcare systems, right? And we started to talk about this last time, that the rate of Black mother mortality is worse in this country than it is in most developing nations, right? The rate of Black infant mortality is worse in this country than it is most developing nations, right? So we have to, as we talk about healthcare justice, we're talking about healthcare for all, but also ending the system of medical apartheid. As we
Right.
talk about education, we have to be talking about education, free quality education, pre-K through PhD, but we also have to talk about what does that education look like, and requiring that it be grounded in ethnic studies, which is something else that's hugely important. It's what I teach. I teach Black studies, right?
Right.
We talk about economic structures, and you raised homelessness. Yes, homelessness is a huge problem. And, you know, Black people are overrepresented at something like 4 to 5 times the rate of our population share is unhoused, right? So we have to talk about that. And so we have to really be abolitionists, summon in, you know, Mama Harriet Tubman's spirit, and be
Yeah,
abolitionists.
that spirit. That's right. That's right.
And say every single system has to be completely dismantled
Yes.
and new systems rebuilt. And so that's what we intend to be, is Harriet Tubman abolitionists as we take office.
Okay. My next question. How do we get in the state of forgiveness as a country, right? You know, us as Black people, we're very forgiving, right? We have always been forgiving, but how do we get the country to heal with so much trauma in this country since its inception? Once again, since the inception of the country, there's been nothing but turmoil, trauma, and bloodshed. How do we reverse things to make it a better America? Like, how do we do that?
So, you know, I got to run in a minute, but I'm just going to say
I
quickly,
know.
the answer is justice. You know, you can't ask people to forgive while you're still causing harm, right? No, I don't forgive you while you're still stabbing me, right? And so until we get to justice, I think it's premature to ask for healing. Now, it doesn't mean that we as Black people just accept trauma. but it means that we have to find places of rest within our own communities and recognize that there is healing to be had in our justice struggles. And until we get to justice, I mean, that's the chant, and that's the song, and that's the saying: no justice, no
couldn't agree more. I couldn't
Yeah.
agree more.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that, because um, there is a lot of scarring going on our end, because we've been hurt from everything that's been happening to us, to our ancestors, and it's been going on for so long that we're traumatized by the things we saw as well. Even growing up at my age, I remember being a little boy, just going to a diner that was like a Whitefield diner, and then soon as my mom and I walk in with my sisters, and they giving us a side eye, like they don't even really want to serve us. So it's like, it's they might not say it, but you feel it.
Right.
Or how you're treated versus how they are.
Right.
You feel it, you see it, you experience it, you get accused of things. As Black men, we're stopped by the cops more than anybody else out here in this country. I've experienced this my whole life. Part of the reason I don't have my beard, to be honest, is because every time I wore my beard and I had my licky head out and I had it out, every single time I was pulled over by police or stopped by cops, searched, treated like a criminal, treated like a thug.
Right.
So how do we stop that as well? That'll be my last question, and also tell the people why they should vote for you. That's my last question. How do we stop the police with the racial profiling and police brutality? And how? Tell us why we should vote for you. Tell the people why they should vote for you. You had my vote. I'm telling you already, just flat out, straight like that.
We're honored to have your support. I mean, basically, there is no reforming a system of policing that descends from slave catching.
Right.
So police be policing, right?
They be policing.
And so we have to develop new systems of public safety that are really grounded in community and grounded in making sure that people have what they need, right? You can virtually eliminate crime. More than 97% of crime would be eliminated if people just had what they need: livable wage jobs, housing, mental health resources, all of those things. And we could have a world without a system of policing that descends from slave catching. We think people should vote for us because we know that the values and vision that we represent the people. And I know that we're in a world now where they try to scare you into thinking that you have to vote for the lesser of two evils. But my mother and my grandmother taught me that probably your grandmother said this too, that fear and faith can't occupy the same space. And so we have to be faithful people. Don't be fearful people, be faithful people. And so we say, vote your vision, not your fear, and get down
Vote your vision, not your fear. That's right. I love that. I love that so much.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me. It was great.
Thank you for coming on. I want to say one last thing to you, and it's this. My friend and I, we were having a conversation. We were on the phone. We were talking about the interview, actually. And I want to say this to the people and to you. A lot of people are very confused because, like you just said, it's a battle between the lesser of the two evils, right? But here's one thing that I want a lot of people to think about and consider. The reason that the media does not talk about the independent as much, it is because they know if the independent gets in, they have to give the people what they deserve. They have to give the people what they need. And once they do that, those parties will diminish because playtime is over. Wake up, folks. That's all I want to say. Melina Abdullah, thank you.
Thank you so much, brother. I really
Thank you
appreciate
for coming on. Thank you for coming on. And next week, folks, we will have Dr. Cornell West on, and he will talk about his run for the presidency as well. Thank you for coming on Stirring the Pot. I'm very humbled that you came on again, and we had this great conversation, and you gave the people some great information.
Thank you so much. Stirring the pot. All right.
Let's go. Until next time, folks.
Thank you.
Thank you.